Hello, everybody, migrant leaders, mentors, and mentees. Thank you for joining us at the October 2025 Connect conference. I'm Ilham Fardod, as most of you know, founder and CEO of the charity Migrant Leaders. The purpose of our monthly Connect conferences is really to get the mentors and mentees together, hear two or three career stories from the mentors because it inspires and informs our mentees, to also conduct a facilitated discussion and networking session. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about why this moment in time is really special for migrant leaders. As you know, I launched Migrant Leaders as a registered charity back in 2017 after spending 23 years as a finance director in large corporates in GE, News Corp, and EY. Today, 7 years on, with some help from my friends, we are at a position where we have 4,000 mentees on our development program, and we've got 2,000 mentors from 95 FTSE 100 and leading companies. So 2,000 mentors, 4,000 mentees, 25 corporate partners with whom we work very closely to design and deliver insight days, internships, workshops, work experiences, and lots of connections and opportunities for our mentees. But this is only the beginning. We've actually tried very hard the last 7 years not to get too big, because we wanted to have a robust program. We wanted to have good people, policies, processes, really good program, systems, and ways of doing things. As you know, we now have the Migrant Leaders app, which helps mentors and mentees get connected based on their sector and professional aspirations and development needs. We've got lots of policies, processes, people, and program that makes us really robust. Now is the time for growth. So we have ambitions to grow Migrant Leaders to having 10,000 young people on our development program by the end of 2027. That's not easy, because not only we have to have the corresponding outreach function and marketing, not only we have to have robust operational processes, policies, and program to really handle that number and scale, but also make sure that we have the same rigorous quality as we've always had and keep improving in the meantime. For example, we've always assessed all the applications from the young people. We evidence check their GCSEs and we interview every single applicant. This is really important because this is how we get to know the Migrant Leaders mentees, and it's how we give them feedback and opportunities for improvement from day one, from the moment they apply to Migrant Leaders. We have more work to do in terms of making sure the young people really gain the social capital, know-how, and ways of work so that they can engage constructively with our professional mentors. Most of our young people, if not all, have never spoken to a professional person or someone working in a corporate. They're inexperienced, as you can imagine, from their age group. They typically join at 16, 17. And their socioeconomic background is such that in their day-to-day lives, they've never come across people like our mentors. That's why I'm personally really grateful for the support that Migrant Leaders mentors give our mentees. We have put in place measures to train the mentees when they get into Migrant Leaders. For example, our pre-mentoring program to train them in ways of work, engaging with their mentor, turning up on time, preparing for meetings, all sorts of those good stuff. And we continue to improve in those areas. So thank you for your huge contribution to Migrant Leaders, because without the mentors, we wouldn't be the program that we are. I'm going to stop there hand over to my good friend Gulshan, who is going to be kindly sharing her career story with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilham, and welcome everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining at 5 p.m., on a Wednesday evening. So today, well, before then, my name is Gulshan Patel. I'm a Director of Investor Relations and Corporate Communications for Senior PLC. Senior PLC is a FTSE 250 aerospace and defense company, and we're based in Rickmansworth, up north in London. Today, I'm here to share my career story or career journey to all of you who are attending, and also those who will be listening in and viewing the video that's put together by the team from Migrant Leaders. So let's start it off. Before we do that, actually, if we can hold any of the questions, just keep them to mind as I go through my career story. And should you have any questions, there will be time after I'm done with the 2 slides that I've prepared for us to go through that. So, where do I start? I'm originally from Malaysia, and most of my childhood was spent traveling and living in different countries and appreciating different cultures due to my dad's job. And so, starting off in Malaysia, I have lived in Russia, Germany, Philippines, and Nepal. It was hard work to be, to go from very different cultures, to go from a Malaysian education system as well and a Malaysian culture, and be put into these various other education systems and various other cultures, and overcoming language and the barriers that different cultures bring as well. But it was also, apart from, not wanting to focus on the negative, it was really positive because it taught me to be agile. It taught me to be, adaptive to different scenarios, taught me to appreciate that actually we're all of the same ilk. We might look different, we might sound different, come from different countries, but at the end of the day, we all we're living, breathing humans. And we all have the same goals at heart. So from that childhood background, I then went on to receive a government scholarship, and that was down to working really hard and putting focus in terms of my studies and just trying to get the best out of what I could. And just for context, so for my family, my father was the first in his family to go to university, but my mother didn't have that opportunity. So although my dad did, there was someone in my family that had gone to university before, it wasn't both parents, and it wasn't, it was in a different context because he went to university in Malaysia, and I was really fortunate to go to university, to get into a university in Australia to study both my undergraduate and graduate degree. Once again, moving to a different country, taking a risk of not surrounding myself with familiarity, but to go for something different and to appreciate the opportunity that was presented to myself by receiving this scholarship. So I went off to Australia and I studied economics and political economy. At 2 universities. I went to the Australian National University and did my Bachelor's of Economics there. And then I furthered my education by doing a graduate degree at the University of Sydney. Along the way, I also took any opportunity that was presented itself, and one of those was a summer internship at the Asian Development Bank while my parents were living in Nepal. So it was just through conversation, once again, putting myself out there and just by the by having a conversation with someone that attended an event that I was present at because I followed my father. And I was just speaking to this person and just voicing that I have an interest in doing, economics and really understanding the dynamics in terms of Asian um, countries and how that's different from developed countries. And in that conversation, it came up, well, would you like to do an internship? And I was just kind of, dumbfounded and was like, sure. I'm not sure what to say, but I sort of said, okay, let's give it a try. And it did. And it turned out to be such an interesting internship. And it helped me kind of narrow and figure out after university where I wanted to go. And that brings us to 2009 when I started work, and I worked for the Securities Commission of Malaysia and in their economics department at the start because I graduated with an economics degree. So that's kind of the natural progression that you think. Let me go and do what I studied for. And so I started off in the economics department and did that for a year. And I was, the undertakings I took there was everything that my degree prepared me for. So doing econometric modeling, writing papers in regards to the capital market of Malaysia. But there was something missing. And it felt like, okay, this can't be it. I can't just have studied economics and then be put into the economic department of an organization and this be it. And it was only when I was asked to present a paper and I went up and presented to an audience and I came to life. And I didn't notice it myself that I came to life when I was doing this presentation, but someone else did. And they came up to me afterwards. They said, you did that really well. You presented something that was really dry. No offense to anybody else studying economics out there or the economists out there, but taking a subject matter that was really dry and being able to convey it in a way that non-economic, people with an economics mind can understand. And I sort of took a step back and sort of said, okay, well, that's how I understand it in my head. And he at the time was one of the managing directors of the commission. And he said to me, you're lost in the economics department. You need to move to this department called the promotions unit. We need someone who's financially and economically savvy, but able to kind of bridge the gap between understanding the quantitative element and then relaying that information in a communication perspective and a comms perspective. And I sort of took a step back and I thought, well, that's not something that I've studied. How do I know I'm going to be good at this? And he said, well, think about it, but it's a great opportunity. And I went back, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Let me take a risk. Let me take a chance. Let's go and see if I don't like it. We'll deal with it then. But let me go and do this. And I did. And that was the start of my career in investor relations and corporate communications. So that's ultimately how this came about. I did study economics, but life has many interesting pivots that crossroads you found yourself, and that was one of it. And so, yeah, that started off my career in that perspective. Along the way, in my first role, I also took up other opportunities that were presented itself. So one example is I did a placement at a bank. We covered the capital markets of Malaysia, which is a really broad kind of topic. And we were selling things, that banks put together in terms of whether it was REITs or an investment of some sort. And I was communicating this to potential investors, but not really understanding what exactly it was selling. So I took a step back and I said, you know what, let me go and actually experience from that angle what it is I'm trying to communicate to investors. And I did that. And it gave me a different perspective, and it gave me an appreciation and increased my understanding. The other aspect I want to talk about is I continue to learn. So even though I was an economist, now in the promotions unit, um, trying to sell the Malaysian capital market to foreign investors coming in, I decided to continue learning German, just as a way to kind of keep that growth side of myself going and always to kind of challenge yourself and in doing something that's very different. So it's kind of left brain, right brain kind of perspective. Moving then from 2009 to 2011, from working in the Securities and Exchange Commission, I then, because I was bringing to market all these products that banks were selling to foreign investors, one of the banks noticed what I was doing and thought I did it really well. And so I was then headhunted for the investor relations position. And that in itself was also a risk. It was like, okay, I'm very comfortable with what I'm doing and have been doing for the last few years. Do I want to rock the boat by trying something different and becoming an analyst for the bank? And it was like, once again, it's taking a step back. Do I do this? Do I take the risk? Is it worth it? And evaluating everything. And then coming back to actually, everything happens for a reason. There's a reason why this was presented to me. Let's go for it. If it doesn't work out, we'll come to that bridge when I come to it. But it's that, taking that risk, taking that step forward. And so I did. And then continuing on my career journey, it was then a few years later, it came to light, an opportunity came knocking at my door where I was offered to do my master's in London. And that's how I ended up here currently. And so I got the opportunity and I said, okay, do I want to make a move again? So I finally come back to Malaysia. I've set up a good life for myself. Everything's nice and sort of packaged for me. Do I want to rock the boat again? And the answer was, why not? There's an opportunity, take it. So I came over and I did a master's in public service policy at King's College London. Now you must be wondering, what does public service policy have to do with investor relations and corporate communications? Actually, nothing at all in terms of the subject matter, but in terms of the skills it afforded me to further grow, and that's coming back to this growth, the continuing to grow. It's sort of the skills that I picked up from that subject matter really helped me in terms of formulating how to do my job and to do the role better for other companies. So I did that for a year and was then, really grateful to get a role here in the UK. And that set me up I had experience in another market, in the Malaysian market, but I had no experience in the London or, the developed market. And IR is a very different, has a very different hat in those two jurisdictions. So it provided me with an opportunity to experience something else. And I wasn't sure if I was going to, like how investor relations and corporate communications is done here. But I decided it's an opportunity, let's grab it. And that was 2013 and it's 2025 and I'm still around. So I must like it to some extent. And then finally coming to 2018, I was offered, once again, an opportunity. And this time I doubted myself. So at the start of 2018, I was offered my first director role. And actually, I turned it down. And the reason I turned it down was because I myself wasn't sure that I had the skill set in order to take on the role. So I said, that's amazing that you've come to me. Thank you so much for thinking of me and giving me this opportunity, but I don't think I'm ready. And, that was that opportunity. And I thought, okay, look, it's gone away now. And, let me live up to the decision I made. So let's go back and learn more of what you think you're lacking. And surprisingly, the same opportunity came back 10 months later because the person they had appointed at that time 10 months ago fell out and it didn't work out. And so the same company came knocking again and they said, it was very, direct. They said, look, we gave you 10 months. Are you up to speed yet? Come and take the role. And so I laughed because it's ironic how things happen for a reason. And I, believe strongly in that. It's like one more sign you want, take the opportunity. And I took it. And I've been at senior now for 7 years. And it's been an amazing, although a roller coaster ride. I've experienced everything under the sun with the company, from being there when the share price was at the high of £3.50 to it dropping to 46p during COVID, having a takeover bid, so someone coming in and trying to take over the company and successfully defending against it. We're now currently going through selling a third of the business. So it's this, if I take a step back and look at what I've done and I've achieved, it's, I myself can't believe it sometimes, but I'm very grateful for being given this opportunity. So I think it comes down to, I've put a picture up in the corner there on the bottom right hand side. Believing in yourself is the secret to success. And I think that holds true for myself because, going through my career story. And Fozia, if you go to the next page, please. If I then think about what I've learned, one of the most important things that brings to mind to me is your experience is your own. However you've come to where you've come to, that's very unique. It gives you a unique perspective. So own it. Own that. Because no one is the same. No one has those perspectives. And whatever it might be, you will be able to see it from a different angle. And that could be all it takes to think differently as well. Take up any opportunity that presents itself, however small you might think it may be, but you don't know what it may turn out to be. It pays to take risk. I know it's easy to say this, and it's easy for me to say this now, but looking back at all the turning points I've had and how I had to kind of G myself up to take the risk, I understand, where how difficult it will be. But the thing is, what do you have to lose? That's the thing you should kind of remember, and ask yourself, if I do this and it doesn't work out, so what? I'll be able to, as long as you have your core that you can fall back on, whether it's your family, whether it's people that you surround yourself, whether it's your faith, whether it's mentors, whoever's there, the core of your grounding, you can achieve anything you want. And then I love this because rings true for me. There will always be some element of an imposter syndrome, but stand firm, believe in yourself, continue to believe in yourself, because the thing is, you just need to. The perspective is different, and I put it up there. It's kind of like just it's me to me. My experience is my own, and what I bring to the table is valid and it's useful. And if it doesn't work, I've had that experience. Or if I've made a mistake, I've had that experience. I'm still learning. And I think, it's true for all the mentors here. No matter how experienced you get in your career, no matter how experienced you get in life, you're still learning. You still continue to learn. And then, yeah, finally, that brings me to my final point of keep growing and learning. Never stop. Because the world is out there, and the world, for you, all who are at this crucial element of either at the end of high school or going into university. It's an amazing part. Take any opportunity and just grow, because the world is your oyster, as they say. And that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening. And now I open it up to questions.
What an adventurous career, Gulshan, and really, really good learning points. Um, really good learning points. I'll have a look if Fawzia wants to field any questions. But while we do that, I'm going to ask a very typical question. Do you have any regrets at all?
No, because I wouldn't be here experiencing what I'm experiencing if I did have any regrets, right? I think sometimes someone did ask me, do you regret not taking the role 10 months earlier? And I said to them, actually, no, because in those 10 months, I got to experience so much from where I was. And that experience has led me to be able to do this job much better than I could had I not had that experience. So I don't know. I'm always a glass half full kind of person. I want to believe that in life. I think there's just too much negativity out there. I mean, we only have to look to the news to now to for that to be true. So it's kind of, yeah, just look in the bright side, look in the positive, and yeah, focus on that.
I do have a question, actually. Somebody sent it to me in the chat privately. The question is, what does a typical day in your role look like, Gulshan?
Oh, amazing question. Thank you for that, whoever sent that through. It's never the same. And that's what led me to have a career in investor relations, corporate comms. It's so diverse. It's not, it's not monotonous. It's every day is different because you never know what it's going to bring. I mean, typically on a given, when everything is going right, it is sort of, I come in, I read up on the news of anything to do with the company, anything to do with the peers in the company's space, and anything to do with the sector that might affect the company, because that's very important. Because if I'm reading this, the investors excuse me, are also reading this, and the analysts are also reading this. So I need to prepare myself in case analysts or investors ring up and ask me questions about what's happened in the industry, what's happened with our peer group, what's happened to us. So that's what happens in the morning as I come in. And then each day it's its own. So for IR and corporate comms, within a calendar year, we have several points which are quite in place. So we do a full year result at the start of the year. We do a half year result in the mid of the year. Around the middle of those 2 points, you have trading updates that you quarterly updates that you bring to the market. So if around that time it's if depending on what time of the calendar year it is, I will be working on those elements throughout the day and putting together information for that quarterly update or half year update or full year update. Yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, Dr. Shearer has raised her hand.
Hi.
Please go ahead and thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Gulshan, for that fascinating presentation about your history. Absolutely incredible. My question was around some of the challenges that you navigated, some of the rejections that you got, and not so much as, the detail, but more how you overcame them and how you navigated those setbacks and rejections.
Thank you, Dr. Shearer. Thank you for the question and your kind words. That's a great question. And don't get me wrong, I think, I focused on sort of, you saw the high level journey. But if we were to go into the nitty gritty, there were a lot of challenges and rejections along the way. How I dealt with it, I mean, as you get older and more experience, you tend to sort of, coming back to what I said to Ilhan earlier about, focusing on the positive and not dwelling on the negative. But that's after, being in my career for 17 years. So at the start though, rejection hurts. I mean, let's be honest, it does hurt. But the way that what I always come back to, and I think I've said it in my presentation, is I believe things happen for a reason. So with that in mind, always even if it's something I really, really put my heart and soul in, whether it's my the grades I got for my GCSEs or A levels because of the work that I've done and I didn't really achieve it, or whether it's applying to universities and not getting the response, whether it's applying for jobs and not getting those jobs. It's, rejection is hard and it's hard to deal with. But standing firm to that saying of everything happens for a reason just really helped me throughout, and just thinking, okay, that didn't work out. But maybe it just didn't work out because there's something that I can't see of, what that is. But believing something better will come. Maybe it's not going to be tomorrow. Maybe it's going to be in a couple of, months. Maybe it's going to be further down the line. But really holding firm to that. And I know sitting here, it's easy for me to say that, but really believe me, guys, it hold on to something that will help you through those dark, challenging moments. And then also when you get the positive, look back on yourself and say, actually, wait, check yourself, because you're like, okay, that was hard, but this is better.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
We've got another question from Ananya. Ananya, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Fawzia. Thank you, Gulshan, for your presentation. Extremely inspiring, to the point where I might just be reaching out to Fawzia after this to become a mentee and not a mentor.
Oh, bless you.
My question is more around consistency in your career. While, of course, you've undergone sort of multiple changes and you jumped across multiple jurisdictions to work with different companies, do you think there's anything that you have adopted personally in maybe your morning routine or something that you've consistently done in your day, which has, one, kept you motivated, and has also assisted you with your life? Because I feel, for me, as someone who's just beginning my journey in Clifford Chance as a lawyer, I am looking for that kind of consistency in my life where, yes, my days look different and it is a lot of hard work and long hours, but is there anything that I can be doing every day to refuel, to come back to? Is there anything that you perhaps have done over the last kind of 17 to 20 years?
Great question. Thank you, Ananya. Two things, I would say. One from a professional perspective and one from a personal perspective. So professionally, because my life, professional life is just very diverse. The one thing I do is, well, I'm a very structured person. I'm a type A. shouldn't be a surprise to some, but make a list. When you start your day in the morning, your head is clear, right? You've just, have a morning routine. For me, it's taking a walk before I start anything. And I'm kind of processing as I walk, or doing, whatever it is you do, whether it's, it might be meditation, it might just be, but take a little bit time in the morning. It could just even be in the drive or in the journey to work, but just clear your head, right? So you have that headspace, and then make a list of what your priorities are for the day. I have massive amount of lists that I do every single day. That's not to say that I achieve most on the list, right? It tends to, it might not work out because something takes over, but I start out every morning with a list. And then the personal aspect to refuel is it might not be every day, but it's also during the week, find some time for yourself. Not to do with work, take a break. It's super important. And you're starting out and work life balance. Please, please, especially this, in this day and age, keep that in mind, because as you get more experience and as you grow, there will only be other aspects of life added to it, whether it's having being in a relationship and having a significant other to think about, or like in my case, I have 2 kids to think about. So your day, and your life will only get more busy in a good way, but more busy. But always make that little bit of time for yourself to really have that time where you can take a step back and refuel during the week. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ananya and Gulshan. Thank you very much. I think that's really important. I would echo that. Although my time for myself these days usually involves Wordle. So, Elham,
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Elham now if you're ready to do your
Yeah,
career
happy
talk.
to.
Elham. Great
Happy
stuff.
to. So we're about to hear sort of 5 or 10 minutes from me about my career. Most of you have heard enough about my career. I certainly have. And what I normally describe is through this slide, which you can see looks very straight line, very linear, very kind of progressive. Of course, I did an accounting and finance degree, went on to become a qualified accountant, got my financial controller job in GE. They sponsored me to do the Warwick Executive MBA. I was on the Advanced Financial Leadership Program at GE. Went on to be a finance director at News Corp, turning around operationally underperforming businesses, and had my 2 children with my husband during my time in News Corp, which is probably why I stayed there for 6 years. And I then moved on to almost 10 years of finance advisory as a senior manager at EY. I then launched Migrant Leaders, and the rest is history. But life, although all of that is true, life isn't really like that, is it? It's not so linear and it's not so frictionless. So I thought today I'll take a bit of a risk and do a second slide, which shows you some of what happened underneath all this. So if you look at this slide, this is some, not all, of what happened underneath it all. So I came from Iran at the age of 13 in 1986. At the height of the Iran-Iraq War, I remember when I was 11, 12 years old, at that time there were bombardments more or less every night. And we used to go to the basement in middle of the night to be a little bit safer when we were being bombed on. And I remember doing much of my homework during those years with candlelight in the basement while we were being bombed on. And you realize what skills you pick up in extreme situations. Now, no matter what's going on around me, if I want to focus, I focus. There is very little that can take focus away from me. And I think it might have something to do with those early childhood bombardments. So something good always comes out of something bad. But the bad side of it is that every morning, the morning after bombardments, I used to run to school frantically from classroom to classroom to try and see if my friends are still alive, because you couldn't be sure. A few years later, when we came to the UK, I now realized that was not normal. That was not normal to as a child worry whether your friends are alive. So even to this day, 35, almost 40 years after moving to the UK, I'm so grateful for the freedoms and the safety that we have in this country. You never forget your childhood. So we came to the UK when I was 13 years old. And predominantly, I remember a feeling of hope and dreams. I learned English with the help of a few good friends at a school. And they used to talk to me during the break times and lunch times, and I got some practice. I used to, when I was about 13, 14, I worked out that they actually give away free leaflets in NatWest and other banks. If you just sneak in at the age of 13, 14, 15, take their free leaflets, because this was in the late 80s. There was no internet. That's how you were going to learn, from libraries and free materials. And I used to take the banking leaflets and read about their products at night. I used to devour libraries. As much books as I could borrow from libraries, I used to read as much as I could. It was just fascinating to me how in this country you could borrow books for free. My biggest problem in Iran was the prospect of running out of books to read. So there's so much opportunity in some countries, and I still find it astonishing, and I'm still grateful for the opportunities in this country. So I went on to get 11 GCSEs. First of all, when we came here to the UK, I did my maths O level almost 3 years early. Did my maths O level, and then they launched GCSEs. So I got 11 GCSEs and 3 A levels. By the time I was 18, I also saved £4,000 by teaching maths to anyone whose parents were willing to pay £5. Although I went to 3 status schools in 3 years, so there wasn't much money around, I had to throw in a sweetener into that deal. The deal was, pay me £5 for a 45-minute maths lesson, and if you ever fail a maths test again, I'll give your money back. And I never had to give any money back, because actually to pass GCSE level maths tests, you just have to follow a formula. You really don't have to be a mathematician. So I saved £4,000 teaching maths and selling perfumes door to door. Incredibly profitable, selling perfumes door to door. And I saved £4,000 by the time I was 18. But by then, my parents had separated. My dad went back to Iran, and I had my little brother to think about. So I decided to give my £4,000 to my mum for my little brother, because I thought I have a secret weapon. I was going to improve my life by going to university. I had it all sussed out. I had it all worked out. And then I hit a brick wall. I hit a brick wall. I realized at 18 that actually it won't be so easy going to university, because with an Iranian passport, I would have been counted as a foreign student, which meant foreign student fees. No matter how much maths I was teaching, it was never going to be enough for foreign student fees. So I thought, right, the only way for me to go to university is going to be to convince the British government to count me as a home student. Because back then, if you were a home student and certain other criteria applied, they would pay for your fees and would even give you £50 a week grant money, maintenance grant. So I thought, okay, where is the UK government? Where is the British government? I thought of Birmingham City Council offices. So I went there, camped outside there for 3 days in a row, and I wouldn't take no for an answer until they let me in so I could tell them the following. I had just done A-level economics, so I had this new language that wasn't necessarily maths or science anymore, but economics. So I said to them, I want to go to university, get a graduate job, pay my taxes, be a useful member of society. I had rehearsed that so many times in front of a mirror because English was still very much my second language at that time. And on day 3, it worked because they said they will help me. And a few weeks later, I got a letter that confirmed my home student status. So off I went to university, did an accounting and finance degree. And I thought, great, now I'll get a graduate job. But then there was a major problem. The next major problem. When I finished my degree, I had only been in the UK 8 years, and you needed to be in this country for 10 years to get your residence, which meant I wasn't allowed to work. It was a disaster to say to someone like me with all those hopes, dreams, drive, that you can't work. It was the worst thing they could tell me. Really the worst thing. So I had to think creatively. How could I make use of my time to progress my planned career as an accountant and not break the law? And the way I discovered it was to do my ACCA studies. The ACCA was the only accounting body that allowed you to study full-time without having a training contract. So I went with them, the ACCA. Passed my exams first time, which was another tick those days to get on your CV, and still is an important tick to get on your CV if you want to be a qualified accountant. And that was that. But then all the news headlines came. At that time, it was meant to be the worst graduate recruitment year in the history, in British history. And that's why now when young people tell me about how unlucky they are, really the market is bad, it's the worst ever for graduates, I always take it philosophically. I always say, we've been there before and we will be there again. You are not just a number, you are a person. You can get through this. You need to think creatively. How are you going to get through this? So it wasn't going to be easy to get a graduate job. I actually applied to 400 jobs and all of them rejected me. I had folders of rejection letters, which I dutifully filed, and I went through them. I called every switchboard that rejected me. I called them to get feedback. Every single one of them said, we can't give feedback. We've had too many applications, which I had to respectfully accept because it's true. In a market like that, they would have had many applications. I got one offer actually from an excellent company I really wanted to work for, and it was a graduate role. But at that time, my brother was living with me when he was doing his A-levels. So without telling anyone, I rejected that job offer. And I don't regret it to this day. I don't regret it. It was the right thing to do for my family. So I was back to square one, as you can see, the tide of going up and then being brought back down to earth. So I thought, okay, if I'm not going to be able to land another graduate job, let's see how I can get these so-called skills that I'm supposed to get. Through Elham Style, I used to run into recruitment consultancy offices in their receptions and take their leaflets as well before they could say hi. And I used to say, thank you very much. I don't have an appointment, because they wouldn't give me an appointment. I didn't have any skills yet, apart from a degree and accounting exams. And I didn't have any work experience really. Yes, I worked in bars and restaurants and sold the stuff, but it wasn't the kind of experience they were looking for. So they wouldn't give me an appointment. So at least I took their leaflets and learned a few things about CV writing and cover letters and how to apply to jobs and what skills are valuable in which finance markets and segments. So I realized by reading those leaflets and thinking about it that the way I was going to kickstart my career was to pick up the skills that the finance careers need. And it doesn't